When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Aloe or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does online business better than Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/income.
Wow, this house is cute. But can I really get in the game in this economy? I do have savings, and I am responsible-ish. I should bury it. I'm being wild. But what if I'm not being wild, though? Could I actually score a...
Kick off your home buying journey with Zillow's new BuyAbility tool. It makes it easy to find out what you can afford, so you can get off the bench and onto the playing field with confidence. Check your BuyAbility, only on Zillow.
Hello, I'm Jason, and I support GenXGrownUp on Patreon. You should do the same, because the world just needs more GXG to make it a better place. Just go to GenXGrownUp.com/Patreon to donate to the cause.
No life, no fun. Don't you know that you're a grown-up?
GenXGrownUp is a YouTube channel, website, and audio podcast you're listening to right now. All made for and by people who love exploring media, games, tech, and toys of yesterday and today through the eyes of Gen Xers who refuse to grow up.
Your dinner cannot just be French fries. Basically, life sucks as a grown-up.
Welcome back, Gen X Grown Up podcast listener, to this Backtrack edition of the Gen X Grown Up podcast. I am John. Joining me, as always, of course, is Mo. Hey, man.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. It's not a show without George. How you doing, George?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
In 1985, a group of the biggest music stars on the planet came together for one night to record a song that would make history. The powerful anthem they produced raised millions for famine relief and proved that music can truly change the world. In this Backtrack, we're traveling back 40 years to explore the history and legacy of the song that saved lives, We Are the World. That is a fascinating topic that I learned so much more about than I already knew leading into this Backtrack, and I can't wait to get into that. Before we jump in, though, here in this opening segment, it's time for some fourth listener email. The three of us are on the show. We're 1, 2, 3. If you listen, you are the fourth listener. And specifically, if you drop us a line to tell us your response to one of our episodes. And the fourth listener for this episode is Scott C. Now, Scott dropped us a line with the subject, Satanic Panic episode story.
Oh, God.
Man, we're getting so much feedback still on the Satanic Panic. I know so many people have resonated with them because it was such a big deal. It turned out to be nothing, and it impacted so many people. But it impacted Scott, and he dropped us a line. So he opens it off, says, "Hey, John, the story you told on the Satanic Panic episode about your marauding days," vandalism, some would call it, yes, reminded me of a story from my misguided youth. You mentioned drawing pentagrams and upside down crosses on things to blame the Satanists for your vandalism, and I just had to share this story. The summer before my junior year, 1987, I got a maintenance summer job with the school district. The staff consisted of the custodial staff from the high school and about 8 high school kids, me included. We had to do lawn maintenance, clean the school, and other odds and ends. Well, one day, I was by myself mowing behind the elementary school when I hit something with the mower. I looked over and saw I'd run over the corpse of a recently dead bird. Now, he says, I am not sure what possessed me to do what came next. Possibly Satan, but I couldn't pass up the opportunity. I took one of the big chunks of mulch that every school had around their shrubbery, and I drew a big pentagram in a circle on the sidewalk. I then dragged the mangled bird into the center to create the appearance of a minor satanic sacrifice.
Oh, my God.
Just a small one to tide over the Satanists between sacrificing children and goats and such, The following week, I heard the custodial staff ranting about how the Satanists were everywhere, even right here in our school district.
Oh, jeez.
He says, I was snickering inside and also scared that my theatrical work got pinned to me. I'd be branded as a Satanist to spend the rest of my life in jail. Fortunately, it was the 80s. My prank was surveilled by no one.
That's funny.
Thank you, gentlemen, for unearthing that skeleton from my closet. Ah, pun intended. Bird skeleton. Yours in Satan. Yours in Satan, Scott.
Oh, my God.
I get it. Yeah, I think it was almost like we didn't know what we were doing back then. We were trolling the people that thought that was something. You know, it's like,
Sure.
well, just do crazy stuff and blame it on Satanists. No one will think it's me because I'm not one of those. Yeah, crazy. Scott, great story. Well written. Thanks for sharing that. We're glad we dredged that memory up for you with our backtrack. Listener, if you would like your email or story featured here on the show, look, it's drop dead easy. All you have to do is hit us up with an email directed to podcast@GenXGrownUp.com. We'll read every single one. And most of them, just like Scott's, will eventually make the show. Okay. With that good business behind us, it is time now to jump into the body of this backtrack all about We Are the World after this very quick break.
You're the perfect blend of elegance and style, and your ride should be no different. The 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid meets all your needs, from business to brunch and everywhere in between. With head-turning details like a sleek front end, plus stylish interior, and an available 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster and seamless tech integration. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more about the new 2024 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid.
You're listening to Gen X Grown Up. But if you have a friend who's not yet listening, why not? Tell them about us. They'll thank you later.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, radio station Z100 joins thousands of radio stations throughout the world in the simultaneous broadcast of the USA for Africa recording, We Are the World.
That's right, radio stations, including KISS FM, playing the USA for Africa record, We Are the World, at the same time. It was a demonstration of solidarity for the starving people of Ethiopia, and believe me, it was quite a thrill listening to it. Really something else. Up and down the dial, nothing but We Are the World. Very nice.
It's been 40 years ago now that every radio station, I think coordinated on the planet, tried to air We Are the World at the same time. And I remember looking forward to it. Like, man, everybody is in it. I can't believe they all got together for this thing. And even, George, I've had to be a few months ago, you talked about this fantastic Netflix documentary called The Greatest Night in Pop. And you shared with us already some of this story about how We Are the World came from concept to execution to the unlikely circumstances to get us there. But we all may know about the song. I don't think anybody doesn't know We Are the World or has heard it or knows. It's a feel-good anthem, even though it is a fundraiser for a terrible situation on the other side of the world. But as we were prepping for this backtrack, I rewatched that documentary that you suggested, and it is amazing, a tearjerker in many cases. So as we get started talking about We Are the World, why don't you, I think you're probably the most informed about all of us about the background of this with your love of music. Let's talk about the origins, the very basic, the context that lays the groundwork for how we got to We Are the World.
Yeah, I mean, and I do have a love of music, but I'd say it's more my love of history that really helped frame my knowledge about the subject. So let's talk about the historical context in what we came from and what we moved towards during this time in 1985. So we had just kind of come off, historically speaking, from a bunch of musical protest influences out of the 60s and 70s, especially around the Vietnam War in this country. There were a lot of protest songs. There was also protest songs happening in England that centered around things a little bit more closer to home, like labor unions and stuff of those natures and how people were being mistreated in our own country. But here in the U.S., it was all about the Vietnam War and how the government was running roughshod and not listening to what the people really wanted at the time. At that same time, in the early 80s, 83 to around 85, there was a drastic weather-driven famine that happened in Ethiopia. Like they had just had a drought for like years and years and years, and there was no food to be had, and it was already a sparsely vegetative populated area to begin with.
Then it just got worse.
Yeah, very poor country at that point as well. It's not like they had a ton of exports that they were able to use to bolster their economy. Of course, wars and infighting and whatnot that happens in a lot of places. But it was really coming to fruition 83 to 85. The Ethiopian famine was dramatic. It was drastic. It was on our TVs all the time in the news at that point.
Yeah.
Now, this all happened during what we term as the Cold War, right? So all of this is kind of viewed in our minds through that lens of the U.S.-Soviet rivalry. And some people were looking at it like, well, this government's not doing this and that government's not doing that. And America was trying to help other countries as best they could, solidify alliances and, quote, do the right thing. Of course, the government was kind of sometimes doing it with ulterior motives, right?
As governments do.
I'll give you a whole bunch of relief if I can build a base. Can I build a base in your area, right? That was kind of a big thing in the early 80s. But there were some individuals who saw what was going on and decided that they wanted to make a difference on a different level. And the one individual, and he's not without his own controversies, but the one person who really kind of drove this whole wheel forward is Bob Geldof. Now, I know John and Mo, you guys know who he is because you just watched the documentary.
Yeah.
But you also probably knew him from before because originally he was a leader along with another lady, and I'm trying to remember her name. It was Midge Ure, who they helped produce a song called Do They Know It's Christmas? And this was in 1984. They called the group Band Aid, and it was a bunch of British vocalists and artists who came together to produce this one song. And it's a fun song. It's a tear-jerking song. And it was kind of a precursor to We Are the World. It did raise a significant amount of funds for famine relief in Ethiopia.
I remember We Are the World. I remember the Do They Know It's Christmas coming out. And at the time it was much like we're going to talk about We Are the World. It was one of those things that it felt larger than just a song. I mean, it clearly was larger. It had a fundraising component, but the fact that all these people came together, volunteered their time and their efforts. I've heard recently, I don't know if you've come across this, but it's come under a lot of scrutiny lately, the Do They Know It's Christmas, because it was the 80s. It was written at a different time. And it frustrates me when modern sensibilities shine a light back on things and go, oh, it's insensitive. They said the lyrics were promoting stereotypes and it was condescending to the people of Africa. And I understand that. I'm sympathetic to anyone who is offended by it, but being offended doesn't mean it didn't also have a good intent behind it and a good heart. It was to help. Any condescension that was in there. So whenever people talk about these kind of efforts and go, well, these days you shouldn't have said that or whatever. This was the beginning of music trying to be an activist, trying to do more than just do something for themselves. So it frustrates me when people look back and go, oh, it was ill-informed. They were based as 40 years ago in information, right?
Yeah, I totally agree because I saw some of those comments as well. It's like, oh, why do you have to, why Christmas? Why this? Why that? And I'm like, that wasn't the point of the song. Right,
exactly.
I mean, you're totally missing the whole point of the song.
How about the spirit of the thing?
Right, exactly. They were just saying that these people are so poor that they don't realize they can't even appreciate holidays. They have no fun like that. So, I mean, I think those people just need to go get a better hobby. I mean, kind of honestly, come on. But the thing is that is also, George, you brought up like protest songs and all this stuff. I think that was one of the first efforts to literally say, we're going to do the song and the proceeds going to this cause.
Sure.
Like most of the other ones were awareness, right? We're going to bring awareness to the Vietnam War. We're going to bring awareness to these things.
But we're still getting paid, right?
Yeah.
But now it's
exactly.
Purely,
but this one, we're going to do this thing and every dollar that this thing makes is going to go to helping this cause.
Right.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of there was that shift of all of this funding the famine relief effort, as opposed to, like you're saying, Mo, the original songs from the 60s and 70s bringing awareness and people still making a profit. Of course, we know the artists likely didn't make shit on those 60s and 70s songs. It was always the music labels making all the money. In this case, Bob Geldof, having been in the music industry for years, knew how to navigate those waters and knew how to make sure that at least a large portion of the proceeds. Maybe not every single dollar, because every time I hear something say every dollar goes to blah, 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 you're full of shit. There's some money that gets paid to somebody to turn the lights on for electricity.
There's overhead. There are expenses.
Everything.
When you say the profits go toward this thing, that net resonates a little bit more true to me. In this case, I think with Do They Know It's Christmas, I always looked at the sentiment of the title to not say anything condescending about Christmas is the giving holiday, but just Christmas is a giving spirit. And do they know that there are people out there that care enough to give to them?
Yeah. Thank you. There are meanings beyond the literal. There absolutely should be and are. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And I think the people in that country were going through a horrific time in history that affected them, obviously, dramatically, personally. Tons of young children dying for a needless reason. In this country, even in 1985, the amount of food that we threw away in the average American household would have fed so many people in another country. It's ridiculous. And the fact that as human beings, we can't find a way to solve even the simplest fucking problem of hunger because of greed of commerce pisses me off even now. And I was a Reaganite person. I was Gordon Gekko with the slick back hair. I believed in making profit in the 80s. I'm fortunate enough to be older and a little bit more mature and hopefully a little bit wiser based on my experiences now to know that this was full of shit and still is today. Bob Geldof and Midge Ure, they were trying to change that.
Right.
They did that with Do They Know It's Christmas? They got the ball rolling, and we're going to talk about We Are the World in depth in the next few segments. But I want to mention just one other thing that also took place in 1985 that was also one of their creations, and that was Live Aid, which kind of came after We Are the World, but was still riding that same generosity wave that the music world was feeling at that point. And we know, all the details. I think did we do a podcast on Live Aid at some point?
We talked about those Live Aid, Farm Aid, Comic Relief, those kind of spiritual, a group of those. We did
no need to go back into it now, but it happened in July of that year, 2-venue event across the world. We know the whole story about what Queen did during that event, which is still a miracle and amazing to this day. But it was that kind of time that things were starting to change. We were just coming off the second election of Ronald Reagan, 1985, and people were starting to slowly come out of this greed is good mentality and start to move into the, what about these other people? Can we help them? We've got money and food. What can we do?
Yeah. And maybe if the government can't, we'll do something to step in and do it ourselves. Well, don't follow the government, lead the government and show them what they should be doing. Yeah, and I think, that's what some of these things did. Tremendous.
Some things work better together, like NARS's Soft Matte Complete Concealer and Radiant Creamy Concealer. Soft Matte Complete Concealer erases and blurs imperfections with full coverage. Then, Radiant Creamy Concealer evens and brightens with a luxurious texture and radiant finish. 2 concealers, 1 flawless look. Perfect for a no foundation base. NARS, better together. Visit Ulta to shop now.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to tell you that Michelob Ultra is giving you the chance to win tickets to the NBA Finals. That's right, the 2025 NBA Finals. Just head to MichelobUltra.com/NBA Finals. Michelob Ultra courtside NBA Finals sweepstakes. No purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents, excluding Maryland residents. 21 up. Begins at 9 a.m. EST on February 16, 2025. Ends on May 5th, 2025. See official rules at MichelobUltra.com/rules for price and details. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Be sure to subscribe to or follow Gen X Grown Up wherever you listen. And while you're there, rate and review the show too. It helps more than you know.
18 minutes past 11 o'clock on 102 WPIX. This is Dick Summer. I want to thank the many, many people who called. Many with tears in the voice about what just happened a little while ago. And it was a beautiful thing, a powerful thing. We ought to keep it going. And for obvious reasons, you don't need to be belabored with reasons for doing what is in your heart anyway. Next Friday, we will be having the 102 WPIX Lunch Out. As I said before, the idea is very simple. And it came from a person who listens to this radio station. As a matter of fact, a person who listens to this program. And he said, why don't you just simply ask people to take one day and not eat lunch and contribute the money they would have spent for lunch to this particular cause. Hey, that's a great idea. And so that's going to happen next Friday. We'll give you details as the week goes along. But do keep it in mind this time next week for the 102 WPIX Lunch Hour.
We mentioned the Greatest Night in Pop documentary on Netflix that, again, if you haven't seen it, you totally should, because it really documents this whole, what happened there so well. But one of the things they talk about right off the start is, this thing all started with Harry Belafonte, where he wanted to do something like this. And he's like, can we do something similar to, like George was talking about earlier about Live Aid before, doing those Christmas? Can we do something in the United States to help these people? Because part of the things he also said was like, he's like, Ethiopia, these are our people, London, all these other people doing it. But, he says, they're our ancestors. They're people that we came from, that we should be also helping them.
Right.
And he, of course, then enlisted very intelligently Quincy Jones to help him. And that really got the ball rolling.
Yeah, it was really tremendous. And, I even said, we were talking in the break about, and I said earlier, everybody knows We Are the World. But what a lot of people don't know about it is just what a unique situation it was as we kind of dive into this. We just come out of the COVID situation where everybody was at home and they went in their closet and recorded something and sent it over the internet. This wasn't that. This wasn't even each person show up on your day and record your bit. We'll symbol it. All of these artists were in the room all night long in the same place to get all this work done in basically like a 12-hour, 15-hour window.
Yeah.
It was unheard of for, I think they said in the documentary, if a bomb hit this place,
John Denver
pop
be back
music
on top.
has changed forever.
Right.
Yeah,
like,
right.
John Denver be number one
John
again.
Denver back on top because all the big names were
wanted to
there.
be in this and was rejected.
Yeah, I know. Wasn't it sad? Yeah, terrible. Although that was a funny comment. I think it was like Paul Simon or something said that. But yeah.
Yep.
Of course, he said, okay, we need a song, right? That's the first step in all this. And in order to see a song, we need someone to write the song. So he pulled it. I mean, again, the amount of talent out there was just ridiculous. But he pulled Lionel Richie, who in the 80s was just
on top of his game.
Top of the game.
He was coming into his own singular renaissance after leaving the Commodores, right?
Exactly. So, and he had hit albums already. I mean, he was just doing phenomenally well. Then they went to get Stevie Wonder.
Sure.
Well, who wouldn't, right? But unfortunately, it seems like he just didn't return their phone calls.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you want to talk about the people that, so they put together this plan. They get Quincy Jones involved very early on. Quincy Jones is, of course, going to gravitate towards the roots that he thinks are important to this USA for Africa Aid Relief Foundation. And he's going to go to his Motown artists that he knows. Lionel Richie, Stevie Wonder. They leave a message for Stevie Wonder and with his agents and everything. And it's not, cell phone era where they can just pick up the Murtaugh car phone and call them back in a heartbeat. Right. None of that stuff is possible. So then they also bring in arguably the most popular man in music at that time, Michael Jackson, the king of pop. He was just coming off of, I think, Thriller, maybe at that point. I think Thriller had already released, or maybe it was Bad. I don't know. But he was just in between some of those like seminal Michael Jackson 80s albums. So you get Lionel Richie coming off the Commodores and having his big Dancing on the Ceiling run. You have Michael Jackson coming out of his big I'm Bad Thriller kind of stuff. They tried to get Stevie Wonder, obviously. Phone lines were down. But just those people along with Quincy Jones. Holy shit. I mean, it was already perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, again, looking at my project management background, when I watched that documentary, that's the thing that impressed me the most was how do you organize this is worse than cats, trying to herd cats. I mean, this is way worse than that. But somehow they got all these people together, had them check their egos, like they had a sign over the thing, check your egos at the door, because you're talking everybody there, like 90% of people were just like top of their game kind of people at the time, and said, we need you all to work together at one time. We're going to rehearse. We're going to do rewrites on the fly. We're going to do all this stuff and create this song.
Yeah, it's tremendous. And it all happened the way they got it to happen that way. Was they talk about in the film of how musical acts, their schedules were often several months out. There was no way you could all coordinate everybody at the same place for one night for this for free. So the genius thing that they did was, well, the night of the Grammys, we'll just do it right after the Grammys, where everybody is already in town.
Right.
They were already going to be there. Not all of them, most of them. Some of them actually flew in.
A couple exceptions, but most.
The vast majority were already there, and they had to have a secret place. They ended up being A&M Studios, at a studio that they could be in. And now, so you've listed here in our research the volume of talent here, and it's an absolute who's who of, there was the soloists and also just the chorus. The people didn't have solos, was tremendous. So let's just start to walk through a few of these. We start with Lionel Richie, who was at the forefront. He was almost the ringleader of this from the talent side. Stevie Wonder, who was going to be involved in the writing, just ended up as a performer. Wonderful. Paul Simon.
Yeah.
Kenny Rogers, James Ingram, Tina Turner.
I know.
Billy Joel. Oh. And the contrasting personalities and stuff in here, it seemed like it didn't matter. They all, as you said, they all kind of checked their ego at the door.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Right? Diana Ross, Dionne Warwick. Oh, this is beautiful. There was a bit at the end of the film where she says she stayed late because she didn't want this night to end. She was having such a good time in this experience. Willie Nelson, one of my top 5 voices on the planet. Willie Nelson was there. Al Jarreau, Bruce Springsteen, who was just coming off of a concert.
Yeah.
He flew from his last show of a concert
from
to
East Coast to West Coast.
This thing. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, Kenny Loggins. I mean, we've talked about him many times on this show.
Yep.
Steve Perry, unbelievable. Daryl Hall, unbelievable. Huey Lewis, Cyndi Lauper. She won album, I think, Best Female Artist that year. I mean, she was just starting her career. Kim Carnes.
Huey Lewis was he was just starting the ascent of his
He had a
fame.
couple hits, but he was just really starting his way up at that point. Bob Dylan. Bob freaking Dylan. Who knew? And this one, to me, I think was, for me personally, was one of the best, but Ray Charles.
Sure.
He was just amazing. Just watching that documentary and him was
I'm just going to point out, when I put that list in the card for us to go through, I made sure to put it in the order of appearance in the song. So
okay.
That's that's the singing order for solos throughout the song.
Nice.
So if you guys listening ever want to go back and figure, you can use this podcast now as your
for your kids. Don't know who all these people are.
I couldn't do that with chorus singers. I just did them alphabetically, but I thought solos is important because the order that you have, like, of course, Lionel Richie, I get why he's going to start the song, but look at how some of the people place themselves in areas that maybe weren't the most prominent. They are soloists, don't get me wrong.
Yes. Yeah.
But the reason why Bob Dylan's stuff is toward the end is because all of the other artists, especially Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson, they knew Bob Dylan a little bit, and they knew that he was incredibly self-conscious.
Yeah, which is weird.
And they knew the short time frame that they had to get this thing together, because they were just putting this song in front of them, just like through mimeograph and faxes and whatnot. And they said, we've got to give Bob the most time to get ready for his little part, or he's not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So that's why they put him toward the end with Ray Charles, who
they knew
the Motown crowd, Ray Charles is like a godfather essentially to that entire group that you already mentioned. It's just such a beautiful thing. And there's people in there that you're like, well, wait a minute. Al Jarreau, Motown again, Bruce Springsteen. Yeah. Super big at that time. Kenny Loggins coming off of the Top Gun soundtrack.
Yeah.
I mean,
this is crazy.
Incredible group.
This organization of voices wasn't accidental. They actually coordinated, almost like studio production. This was musical production going, what are these voices like? Like, I want this coarse voice to go up against this smooth voice, up against this powerhouse voice. And I remember I'd listened to the song just yesterday, but when I do listen to the song, when I have historically, I'm impressed with okay, who are you? You are a multi-platinum selling record label, artist. And you have you say soloist. Some of them had a sentence or two, a line or two.
Most had a line or two.
Yeah, just a few sentences. Yeah, just a few words.
And this interweaving of one voice would finish a phrase, and the other would kind of join them and then say the next phrase. And it was these swirls of color, but auditorily, it's a treat to listen to when you think about how the voices sometimes contrast or complement each other in ways you wouldn't have expected.
I just thought the part in the documentary which was hilarious to me was pull Quincy Jones' Rolodex. And they showed the and the person who carried that Rolodex around. His assistant carried this Rolodex with him in its own case because it was that big.
Mm-hmm.
But he had the numbers to all these people, and we talked about
if anybody would.
Yeah, I mean, and look at the chorus even on this. I mean, you talk about now. These are chorus. These are people who don't have no solos at all, right? They're just background vocals. That's all they were in this, right? Singing the chorus with a whole bunch of other people. And I don't want to go through every single one of them because there's just so many people. But they also then they just ask people at the awards too, hey, we're doing this thing. You want to join and be in the chorus on this? And they pull people in. But you're talking people like Smokey Robinson just sang chorus.
Mm-hmm.
The Pointer Sisters, all of them, all three of them, just sang chorus on this. You know, I mean, Bette Midler just sang chorus, and they were happy to do that. You know, and I think it says a lot for them too that they were like, yeah, I'll just be in the crowd, just be part of this experience.
Honestly, you're right, Mo. There were a lot of crazy names in just the chorus list, but then you think of some of the ones that are in there that who would have thought of these people being on a song of this magnitude with this group of people? Dan Aykroyd. Now, granted, I know he's a blues brother, but Jesus Christ, the fuck is Dan Aykroyd doing in this song?
I know, really.
Of course, the man who came up with the original idea, Harry Belafonte, he had to be in there. We had to hear that smooth voice, but we only got it in the chorus. You got some other people. You had basically the entire Huey Lewis and the News background instrumentalists singing on this. And a lot of people don't know, I'm a big Huey Lewis fan, so I do, but all of those guys are like barbershop quartet level of blending voices. And so they brought them in specifically because they could bridge the chorus gaps of melodies with the song, because they could make all the harmonies really come together. They were almost Eagles level in their harmonies. Now, I think the Eagles would have been incredible in this setting.
Oh, sick.
But you're not going to get them at this point because they hated each other and they couldn't be in the same room. So you get the next best thing with the Huey Lewis people. You got LaToya Jackson and Jackie Jackson because, I guess Marlon and all the, Randy Jackson, not Elton Jackson, but still anybody with the last name Jackson, Michael is going to get in this thing. And Tito. John, one that I wondered how you felt about him, because we have a little bit of history talking about him on this podcast, was Waylon Jennings.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really interesting. So it wasn't, Kenny Rogers clearly was a country music star, and he was in there. And we had, we just talked about Willie Nelson was there, and Waylon Jennings was there. And I thought, I guess you could say Kenny Rogers is more of a crossover, but still representation from lots of different genres of music. And Waylon Jennings being there initially, I'll say, I thought was a great, like this olive branch, this reach out, because traditionally, like grassroots country music comes out of America and is very inward Central America focused. And to have these country music stars, especially going back, Waylon Jennings was, 60s, 70s, 80s, long time, Grand Ole Opry star, to have him there. And then I was very disappointed to see that when they suggested we're going to change the chorus and put in, was it like some Swahili words or something into the chorus, that he just said, I'm out. I'm not going to sing these weird words and whatever. And I was, as much as I enjoy, I know it was 2 a.m. I know he was out of his comfort zone, but you know what? It was 2 a.m. and it was out of all of their comfort zones.
Yeah,
he wasn't alone, and he walked out of the chorus. I can't help but think maybe his voice is in there still because they did many, many takes. It's possible.
I'm sure they recorded it at some point. Yeah.
But I was disappointed in him, not as an artist. We talk about separating the person from the art. I was disappointed in him personally to see that he wasn't willing to stick it out, to stay out of his comfort zone. Like, is he afraid he's going to lose cred with other artists or something? I don't know what the rationale was, but I thought it was quite odd. Yeah. It was quite odd. But it's basically a wall of amazing voices, background to front-facing soloists that were all amazing voices around the globe.
The one that we skipped over, going back and forth in that incredibly long list, you talk about, backgrounds to famous artists. We didn't mention John Oates. He always gets left out.
I know. I feel bad.
Poor John Oates was just in the chorus. Poor guy.
And me. I was there too.
I know. I should sell him wine in New York. I was in a wine shop in the summer. He used to come in.
I know we have some professional musicians that listen to the show. You know, my buddy Marcus that has suggested a few episodes, listens regularly. I want to run through the musicians, not huge names you might know. Now, living in the music world, you probably know them. We had players like John Barnes, you know, David Paik, Ian Underwood, Steve Porcaro. And these were all, again, people like Louis Johnson and Michael Almataran who've donated their time to be on this, just like all of the big names. And the other thing that from my background, that made me the most interested to kind of see was they also showcased some of the production people in the studio.
Yeah,
who
that was
were
cool, wasn't it?
Walking around with the cameras and lighting stuff. And they just talk about this out-of-body experience where I'm standing here in front of Diana Ross. I'm looking at this shot of her face. And then I realized, wait, I'm holding the camera. I'm the person here living this moment. This is unreal to be there. And that happens a lot to production personnel. Their name is not remembered, but they were as much responsible and a part of making it happen. You said before, George, about all the money. Somebody's got to turn on the lights.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to run the wires. Somebody's got to plug the cameras in. Somebody's got to make all that happen. And they also donated their time and effort.
I thought it was cute, like the cameraman they had. I guess he was one of the few paid people that was there, but he's sitting there, like you said, he's like, I can't believe I'm sitting in front of Diana Ross. I would have paid them to be doing this. You know? He's like, oh my God. I mean, I can't imagine being in the room in the 80s. Like if I was sat in that, if you popped my 80s me into that room, I would just lose my freaking mind.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not a fan of every single person there.
No.
But you're going to look around and go, oh my God, like 3 or 4 faces are going to pop and you're going to just can't believe you're in the room with one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I pride myself on not being starstruck. Like I have met countless celebrities, A through D list, all over the place. I've done interviews and everything. And John, this goes back to even when we were in the Star Trek Club 30 years ago, right? I mean, long time meeting these people. I guarantee I would have lost my shit had I been in that room.
It's too much.
I would have absolutely gone catatonic and just started bubbling my lip over in the corner, waiting for the ambulance to come pick me up, because the sheer volume of talent, not just the level, but the volume of talent in that room. You talked about the instrumentalists, and I know we might not know their names, you know, they might not be household names, but those people, they had an incredible job to do, because think about it, they got to get that song recorded in that evening, because all they were using in the headphones for the singers was the tracks that Lionel Richie and Michael Jackson had laid down on keyboards and things.
That's right.
So those guys had to get their shit together at the same time that all this was going on with these vocalists. And then Quincy Jones and his production crew had to put all that together all in one, like 12-hour set. Like, okay, 12 hours seems like plenty of time to record a 3.5 minute song.
No.
Nope.
I thought it was pretty, I don't know if adorable is the right word, but like watching these artists like Cyndi Lauper running around getting autographs.
Right.
I mean, think of that. Like, you know, just like, I mean, just imagine she's like up and coming, right? She's starting to hit she had a great album, had a lot of hits on it. And for her, like Tina Turner, Billy Joel, and running around, and you know, God, imagine how much that sheet music with the autographs on it would go for. Because I'm sure it's out there somewhere, because a lot of them were doing
you know,
that.
there's 30 or 40 copies. Yeah, they were all getting autographs of each other, which is pretty. Well, they were also, like you, George, many of those, they were probably a little Star Trek too.
Yeah,
sure.
Little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you had the old heads who didn't think twice about it, right? But you had the young and up and coming people who were like, that's Diana Ross standing next to Michael Jackson. When am I going to get to see those two perform in this kind of a setting ever? I mean, that's just nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Now, when we get back from this quick break, we're going to each select a specific, I'll say a story or element or piece of the creation of We Are the World that kind of resonates most with us. Stick around.
I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/support-Ann. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Each episode of Gen X Grown Up has show notes loaded with links where you can learn more about our topics. And there's even more to see and hear over at GenXGrownUp.com.
Thousands of radio stations worldwide played the famine relief song, We Are the World, at the same time this morning. Even Muzak carried it. The only other time a voice appeared on Muzak was when the hostages were freed from Iran. I'm Douglas Edwards, CBS News, New York.
As we often like to do, part of this podcast is about our experiences and our relationship to whatever the material is that we're talking about in that particular podcast, and specifically the backtracks. You know, when we talked about all the kids' machines, you know, John told stories about flipping his go-kart, and
all of our injuries.
You know, Mo talks about, you know, having to leave his apartment just to go outside. All of this podcast is about our personal experiences. So I think it's important that we take just a moment, as John said right before the break, to share a story that we learned either through this documentary or through our own experiences that resonated with us about the We Are the World song creation night, or the song itself, or even whatever was happening on in your lives that made this such a seminal part of our culture and history. So John, I think it's good if we start with you. What one thing really stood out for you?
Sure. And it segues really well off of what we were just talking about in the last segment, how, you know, all these celebrities were together in one room, and at one point they were getting in one of those autographs. And something that they kind of shine a light on too in that film, how these stars, whether they're up and coming and whether they're established or whatever, they have, when you get to a certain level of success, you can dictate what your comfort level is. And you can, well, look, I have my people and I have my entourage and I have my manager who's always with me. And I have my bodyguard who's with me or whatever.
Agents over here. Yeah.
And in this studio, they were all stripped of that. This wasn't Diana Ross and her people, right? This wasn't Dan Aykroyd and his friends. This was the person we needed. Their voice was in the studio, and they were in there alone. And they even, I think the narrator even calls out that some of them even were like off kilter and shy almost because they didn't know how to be, almost stripped down to, look, you're here because you are who you are. But when you are then stripped of all the stuff you've become accustomed to help you cope with this celebrity, now you're just standing there by yourself, representing yourself with no one. Your hype man is not there or anything. And it's humbling to see. It was probably humbling for them, but humbling for me to see these people who I revere and go, well, these are people I put on a pedestal. These are musical artists that created the soundtrack of every day of my life that I heard on the radio and I played in the car, and they are back to just being people who are not being paid to be there, who are out of their comfort zone, who are a little shy and awkward. And then when it came time to do the thing they do, they did it twice as good as they normally do it.
Yeah.
You know, I see these soloists that they've been kind of talking and hemming and hawing, and then they go, wah! They absolutely nail the shit they're doing. And I'm like, that's why you're there. You don't need all that stuff around you. You don't need all of the entourage. You got where you were because of who you are and what you can do and the talent you have and the natural gifts you've got. And it was just so nice to see. And it's hard to quantify, but I hear you guys saying, yeah, you get what I'm saying. It's seeing them in their rawest form and shining in that raw form. It was a unique way to see these artists in a way that I'd heard in the song, but not seen how they got there. I just found that amazing.
Yeah, I agree, because it was like they weren't like the big fish in the pond anymore.
They were all the big fish.
They were all pond. Big fish, for the most part. Maybe some medium fish, but all bigger fish, right?
Yep,
and also, like I said, if their agents were there, their agents would be going to Quincy Jones, like, "Hey, my guy's solo wasn't long as so-and-so solo. Let me
None
get
of
them
that
a longer
garbage.
solo.
None of that.
Or, oh, they're in the back row of the chorus. We need to move in the front. I mean, literally, that'd be the conversations that we
That's what people
on.
do. That's what your representatives are paid for.
Right.
They weren't there. You're just people. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's tremendous. Yeah. So that's mine. All right. So Mo, why don't we move along to you?
Sure.
What is a single thing that you took away from this that most resonates with you?
I just thought this was the most adorable story of the documentary. It just tickled me so much. Was that Cyndi Lauper was doing her part with Huey Lewis and Kim Carnes, I think was the two people she was singing with, right?
Cyndi Lauper.
And they were singing again, belting out and da-da-da. They did a couple takes, and then the sound guy is like, I'm picking up something whenever she sings, something's coming up. And they're trying to troubleshoot her mic. Is her mic bad? They turned off all the other mics to make sure they weren't getting any background noises. They did all this stuff, and they realized it was her jewelry. She had all these necklaces and bracelets on.
Right. What they'd come from the Grammys. She was in full Cyndi Lauper regalia.
Right. And she had to step up to the mic to sing because once she's shorter than everybody else too. So she had to step up. And when she stepped up, all the stuff was jangling and it was just adorable because she's sitting there like, they're like chuckling because everyone was really good natured about it. And all of a sudden she's like, she realized, when the light comes, oh my God. And she felt so embarrassed. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, cause she, I could see like she wasted all of these people's time.
And she's stripping off necklaces and jewelry. She's peeling it off.
Like Mr. T. Captain Lou Albano's rubber bands out of
exactly. She's trying to pull them up under her arms and trying to get them off. And to me, it was just like again, it was like they were real people. Like that's what it showed me. Like they were just like she made a human mistake.
It was normalizing. Yeah. Humanizing. Sure.
And I said, it was just adorable. And watching her, because she's just adorable too, especially back then. Like she was just a cute, small little thing. And she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then she pulls up. And then, of course, like you said, John, she goes up there and belts out her phenomenal voice.
Yeah. Yeah. Better than I've ever heard. Yeah. It's amazing.
So that was George, you picked what would have been my story because this is an amazing story. Go for it, man.
I mean, I went with this one because I have a connection to the artist involved on both sides of this story. And I think I had heard the rumors before the documentary, but the documentary like just lays everything out on Front Street as to what happened. Now, one side of the story we're never going to hear, unfortunately, because we can't.
Right.
Yeah.
That person is no longer with us. But John, you talked earlier about how these artists, they just shined even though they didn't have their entourages with them. Well, one guy who kind of got to bring his entourage with him a little bit was Huey Lewis. He brought his whole band.
Yeah, that's true.
As we talked about, they sang in the chorus.
Yeah.
And he did that because he kind of was a last minute call. He was not originally going to be one of the participants, certainly was not going to be a soloist, because even though for me, he was incredibly big and popular at that time. This is right around the time of the Sports album, which was probably his most famous. And right before he released the album 4, which was one of my favorite albums that he ever did. So to me, he was everywhere. He was everything I listened to on pop radio. But compared to the people in the room, he was a baby in that fame, right?
Just starting. Right?
The reason why he got brought in last minute is because they did have somebody else who was slightly more well-known at the time, maybe a little bit. Mr. Purple himself, Prince, was supposed to be the soloist who sang the line that Huey Lewis did in We Are the World. And the documentary goes on, and I'm not going to go into the entire story because I really want people to go watch this for themselves.
It's worth it.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on this bone, but essentially Prince and the organizers couldn't work out his participation. There was back and forth about, was he going to sing? Was he going to play? He wanted to be in a separate room, all this kind of stuff.
Like guitar solo, right?
Yeah. And so you start to think, when watching this documentary, you might get the impression that Prince was being spoiled a little bit. Maybe he was being a little egotistic. I love Huey Lewis. And I think Huey Lewis's participation in this song is brilliant. His voice is unique and a standout. I don't think people recognized it until a few years later, just how good of a singer he really is. But I don't take that view against Prince in my case. And I think it's because I recognize Prince as being, other than maybe Stevie Wonder in this group, the only true musical genius. Now, Ray Charles, I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but what we have discovered about Prince since his passing especially, the volume of his contributions to the music industry to music in general are probably never going to be fully ascertained. That man, in my opinion, may have been one of the greatest musical talents of any time period, let alone this time period. So him wanting specific things, I don't think it was because he had a big ego. I think it was because he maybe knew his process.
Yeah.
And maybe understood what he needed to give his best to something that was probably just as important to him as it was to anybody else in the room.
Yeah.
And I think it's a shame that they couldn't work it out. I don't know if it would have done any more album sales or not.
Why not?
I'm happy that I got Huey Lewis, but I'm really, really fucking sad that I didn't get Prince.
Yeah, I agree with you, George, because it almost seems like as popular and stuff is, he is very private person that always has been, and to throw him in a room with that many people just seems like he would just be so uncomfortable. I can see it, and he did contribute a song to the album.
To the album, yes.
Like he did a separate song just for this album, which, you know, again, to his credit, because I think he just knew himself, quite honestly, and he knew that he would not be able to perform well in that situation.
Does not play well with others, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he really does, and that's a lot of geniuses right?
I mean, that's kind of the rap that we get from stories about Prince. You talk about Kevin Smith, you know, was brought to Prince's house at one point to film and do documentary work. And that documentary will never be seen because Prince locked it away in the vault.
Yeah.
You know, at Paisley Ranch or whatever it's called. Yeah. You'll never see any of that. And Kevin Smith has gone on for years talking about how he was a musical genius, but he was difficult to work for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes we give too much credit to geniuses in this world and let them get away with a little too much. I've never heard of stories of him being too abusive to people or anything like that. So I think in this case, I'm okay with giving him the shadow of doubt a little bit. Just like, okay, I'm sorry we couldn't get this worked out, but God damn, that would have been awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it just really just amazed me, though, how they were able to blend all these voices, though, and have them sing their style.
Sure.
Well, that's Quincy Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Which that, you know, the Do They Know It's Christmas one wasn't them singing their own individual styles. It was all of them singing together in a chorus.
It was just a chorus.
Yeah. This one, though, everyone was distinctive, every single voice, and to meld those, just amazing to me.
Yeah. And, you know, and in defense of the whole situation with Prince too, it's worth pointing out that he's not the only artist they approached who couldn't or wouldn't and was not able to attend.
Sure.
He's just the biggest profile, and he was very close and then couldn't finally make it happen.
Right.
So there are plenty of artists who did nothing, whereas Prince did contribute.
Right.
But all that being said, I would not have wanted that part to be Prince now after hearing Huey Lewis do it, because I like how it ended up, you know?
But we do have to at least give a little bit of a shout out and pour a little beer out for John Denver not getting included. That's bullshit. John Denver should have been in this song.
Yeah, that was a weird
anybody deserved, had lived a life of giving, John Denver.
Yeah.
And you know who else that I was shocked didn't get in it, considering another person that was invited?
Who's that?
How in the fuck did they not invite Dolly Parton?
Good point. She would have been a tremendous. And, you know, Kenny could have called her.
Rogers is there. Their song was super popular. How do you not put, I mean,
could she not make it?
The greatest human being on the planet, Dolly Parton's not in this song.
She was busy helping someone else, probably, knowing Dolly.
Probably. She was sending books to refugees in Uganda or some shit.
She was already there. Or something, you know.
This episode is brought to you by Walmart. New beauty is in bloom at Walmart, and it's all about springtime radiance. From Drybar, Tula Skincare, and hundreds more available online, Walmart has the premium brands you want and this season's on-trend products for flawless, glossy hair and hydrated skin. Big name beauty brands? Check. The things you love? Check. Find trending spring beauty and all you need to look and feel gorgeous at Walmart, on app and online.
Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
If you're a die-hard Gen X grown-up, you can pledge your support by clicking join on YouTube or by becoming a patron at genxgrownup.com/Patreon.
Tower Records supports the USA for Africa effort all the way through the sale of We Are the World records, cassettes, and videos, and will continue to support all future recording efforts generated by the Live Aid concert. Tower Records.
Once that crazy night took place, we got the song put together. It was broadcast all over the world simultaneously, as close as they could. And we were there in 85 and we heard it. And I want to talk about the things that came after, what it inspired. George talked a little bit before about Live Aid that came just on the heels of that, but it inspired tons of other examples of activism in music. But before we get to that, Mo, I want you to share with us the success, how well this song performed after all this effort went into it.
Besides the fact that it hit #1 pretty much across the world for the most part.
Instantly.
Yeah, instantly. I mean, that's just, besides that.
It didn't climb the charts. It just was the charts.
Yeah. They sold the first printing. They did 800,000 albums. That was the first printing. They sold out in 3 days.
Ooh.
Tower Records at the time, I don't know if you guys remember Tower Records, but they were like the huge. Right. They said that they said top albums would sell like 200 or 300 copies a week, like with a brand new top album.
Right.
They sold 1,000 a day of this album when it came out.
Wow.
They just couldn't believe how fast it was flying off the shelves.
Yeah.
And overall, the ultimate goal of this album was to raise money, right? And so they raised the equivalent of 80 million, which is like 230 million today for this cause,
$250 million.
Yeah. And it's still raising, like the proceeds from it still go to that charity. It's still continuing to raise money, maybe not as fast as it did, obviously, but still though, I mean, it just broke so many records. It was like the fastest rising single that ever hit #1. I mean, it was just crazy. It's just the amount of stuff this album did.
Yeah. And as we were saying a second ago, just how it continued to influence the success of We Are the World. I don't know that anything did as big. That was like the one, right? But people learned between that and Live Aid what you could do. The next year in 1986, there was Stars, which is by, like we had, was it Africa for USA for Africa was the name of the group they put together by Hear an Aid with an apostrophe in, like an in. It was a heavy metal supergroup, a track called Stars that raised $3 million more in 80s dollars for also for African famine relief too.
That same year, 86, John, that's also the year that we got a thing started by a different group of entertainers, comedians started the comic relief movement, both in the UK and in the USA. Now, in the UK, it was termed Red Nose Day, and they had a bunch of UK comedians. In the USA, it was Comic Relief USA, and famously, it was always hosted on HBO for a long time with Robin Williams, Billy Crystal, and Whoopi Goldberg.
That's right.
I'll never forget the joke that they told when the three of them are standing up there with Whoopi Goldberg in the middle. They go, I think it was Robin Williams goes, look, a reverse Oreo. And Whoopi Goldberg off the cuff goes, anybody want to take a lick? I love that. Made me donate right then. I swear to God, I called in and donated right after that joke.
You win. You got me. Yeah.
Yeah. Just some brilliant stuff.
And a lot of artists did like singles and did individual efforts too to try to help. It's like U2, like they were monster huge in the late 80s, early 90s. Right. They did a whole charity single that promoted AIDS research back in 91. I think it was called One was the album or the song that they did.
Right. A little later in the 90s, 95, Michael Jackson continued his efforts in philanthropy. He did a song called Heal the World. That was talking about his humanitarian goals through a song and a foundation called Heal the World that he set up. And he was pivotal in We Are the World. And you gotta hope maybe that meant that either he already had it in him or it inspired him to continue to do more even after that effort was done, maybe had a good experience with it. I like to think.
You know, and he's not the only individual artist. Now, this person wasn't involved in We Are the World, but Elton John, he had a seminal song come out called Candle in the Wind, which was all about Marilyn Monroe and her legacy. But then he re-released it and changed the lyrics just a tiny bit and re-released it for the death of Princess Diana in 97. And all of those proceeds from that version of the song still to this day go to the charities that she helped found and run. Right. And it's beautiful to see these artists taking something that is horribly tragic and trying to do something good out of it. It epitomizes the best in the human spirit when that happens. You take grief and you turn it into good.
Yeah.
And that's just a wonderful thing for me.
That's that silver lining. Like, find something good out of it if you can.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also in 97, Perfect Day was another track put out. This was done in the BBC. It was a charity single that had a bunch of British located stars, I guess. And they put out a track, very We Are the Worldy, for Children in Need was the name of the organization.
No. Also they redid the We Are the World. I don't know if you knew that. They did We Are the World 25. They did it for the earthquakes in Haiti.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had like Seal and a lot of rap R&B artists were involved in that one. And it's kind of funny because the We Are the World, I think they were trying to recapture that same lightning in a bottle thing that they did for the first one. And I mean, it's unfortunately most people probably never heard of it.
Right.
It's kind of like the sequels to Woodstock, right? Like,
yeah,
it was good, but it's not the magic.
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say, and then recently, but 2012 is still a long ways back, over a decade back, but somewhat more recently in 2012, Taylor Swift did a track called Ronin on one of her albums. She was inspired by a young cancer victim, and that proceeds from that song went to support cancer charities. So it's just more artists finding that, look, I can perform to make money. I can also perform to benefit others, and it doesn't take anything away from me. It helps others, and I continue to do what I'm doing. I get mine and put something else out there, and it's inspiring.
Yeah, I know we've been taking this list chronologically, but I'm going to jump back even a decade before Ronan, John, and talk a little bit about 9/11. So we all know the tragedy that was 9/11 in this country, and we remember it. I'm sure it's one of those seminal moments, where you were, what everything was happening. But very shortly thereafter, and I mean very shortly thereafter, two different groups got together to do tribute songs and concerts for the relief efforts, not only for the people in New York, but also the first responders. One was called America, A Tribute to Heroes, and the other one was called the Concert for New York City.
I remember.
And one of the reasons why I wanted to mention this this effort is because I remember a lot of artists wrote brand new original songs, like the Eagles came out with Hole in the World, which to this day still tears me up. Of course, Billy Joel at both concerts, being Mr. New York musician, performed New York State of Mind at both of them.
Beautiful.
I mean, it just was these things that they threw together hastily. We live in a different world, so it wasn't everybody crammed in one room over 15 hours. They did these almost telethon style, a little bit more like comic relief. But to this day, those charities still raise money for those incredible causes. And everything that we listed here is probably only 10% of what people have tried to do since the days of We Are the World, that really kind of, it wasn't the first thing, as we said, but I would say it was the thing that most got this charitable music movement moving.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, it's been 40 years since We Are the World, since those few dozen artists, 3, 4, 5 dozen, I guess, artists piled into a room after the Grammys and put together something that led to prove that music can absolutely contribute positively to change in the world. We don't have to rely on political leaders and government officials and, who's in charge. And it's not just a musician. Everybody can do something to contribute to positive change, just like this artist did. They just have a platform to get a little more visibility on it. But everyone can. And like I said, just with some of these we talked about a minute ago, I think it's inspiring just for regular run-of-the-mill people like us. There are things that you can do that you might not think, but they absolutely contribute.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could be cynical, I guess, on this and think like, they're doing it because they're trying to improve their, cachet in the world.
But
or
they
trying
still
to do
did
this.
it.
But you're not talking about somebody whose career is failing.
No.
And they're trying to resuscitate it or anything like that. These are people who are all like at the top when they did this.
Or on the way up.
They didn't need to do it. Now maybe it is trying to stay relevant, whatever, but regardless of the reasons, they did something good, or trying to. So I say, hey, if it helps people, then who really cares?
It did. And I'm going to go listen to We Are the World right after I finish recording this again and remember all those voices meshed together. Well said. Okay. Guys, this has been a delight. I love talking about this topic. George, thanks for all your preparation on this. Very much appreciated.
Thanks,
Before we leave, speaking of doing good, doing kindness, I want to thank a couple of new and upgraded supporters over on Patreon. If you head to patreon.com/GenXGrownUp, you can set up a regular monthly pledge for as little as $1 a month to support Gen X Grown Up and our efforts here on the podcast and over on YouTube and on the website. And I want to thank Major Cranky, love the name.
That's not
joined
George.
us recently. Is that you, George? Is it a pseudonym? Is it your alt?
No, I would be General Cranky.
General Cranky.
That's right. You're right.
Yeah, because he's generally cranky. Of course, it makes sense.
That's right.
So thank you, Major Cranky, George's protege, as well as Josh, you might remember, he joined us very recently, and then he gave us an upgrade recently. He jumped to a higher tier, and I pinged him to thank him, and he said, yeah, I've was a patron, and I've just been binging the podcast so much. I just wanted to help a little more and also get a little swag back, because we don't mention it very often, but at some of the tiers, after a while, we send you out thank you gifts.
Yeah.
So he's like, I want to help more, and I want to get some swag. So thank you, Josh, for that.
Yep.
I'm always astounded when people put out a pledge and then they up the pledge because they're seeing the return for their investment. Josh, thank you. Major Cranky, thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who supports us over on Patreon. You are the best, and we're so grateful that you do. That then is going to wrap it up for this Backtrack edition of the Gen X Grown Up podcast. If you are worried, though, don't worry, because we will be back in 2 weeks with another one. Next week is a standard edition of our show. Until then, I am John. George, thank you so much for being here, man.
Yes, sir.
Mo, I appreciate you.
Always fun, man.
Fourth listener, it's you we all appreciate most of all, though, and we cannot wait to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Take care, everybody.
No life, no fun. Don't you know that you're a grown up?
Gen X Grown Up is a member of the Evergreen Podcast family. Learn more at evergreenpodcasts.com.
Watching shows till sunrise. Unacceptable for grown ups. Your dinner cannot just be french fries. Basically, life sucks as a grown up.
To talk about that kind of resonates most with us. Damn it, that kind of resonates most with us. Stick around there. That'll sound great when I edit it.
Yeah, you'll make it work.
That'll be a coherent thing I said.
Science, science, science! Science, science! Hello, podcast fans. Want to get weird with us? Come check out the Mad Scientist Podcast. We're a weekly show that looks at the history, philosophy, and hard facts behind your biggest paranormal questions.
Did the government really pay for a psychic spy program?
Yes!
Is it true that surgery got its start in grave robbing?
Yes!
Can a roller coaster really kill you?
Legally, we can't say so for sure, but sometimes, yes! Join myself, Chris Cogswell, and my co-host, Marie Mayhew, as we examine the science, philosophy, and history behind the strange and unusual. All to discover what's possible and plausible versus what's, well, just made up. Check us out wherever you find your favorite podcasts. The Mad Scientist Podcast.
Pit Pass Moto, sponsored by Moto America, is the show that keeps you up to speed on the latest in motorcycling and brings the biggest names in motorcycle racing right to you. From candid interviews with the top names in racing to providing insights into the trends and trendsetters driving the motorcycle industry, we have you covered. New episodes are available every Thursday at pitpassmoto.com and on your favorite podcast app. Ride on!